In today's story, we follow Ava, a young girl who faces discrimination simply because of her skin color and the amount of money she wants to deposit at the bank. But when she calls her father, everything changes. This isn't just a personal victory, it's a powerful reminder of how one voice can spark change. Watch to see what happens when Ava stands up against injustice and changes an entire bank. Have you ever been treated differently just because you didn't fit the image people expected? This story will shock you. This is the story of 13-year-old Ava Jackson, who walked into Silvercrest Bank with her head held high, ready to deposit her hard-earned savings. Ava had saved up $5,000 from summer jobs, birthday gifts, and some scholarship funds. This was her pride, her first step toward financial independence. She smiled as she entered, her fingers lightly brushing the cold metal handle of the bank door. Today was special. "Good afternoon. I'd like to make a deposit," Ava said confidently, placing her stack of bills on the counter. But instead of the warm greeting she expected, the teller, a woman named Janet, looked her up and down with a raised eyebrow. "Where did you get all this money?" Janet asked, her voice sharp, her gaze filled with suspicion. Ava paused for a moment, wondering if this was a regular question or if she was being singled out. As Ava stood there, she noticed the other bank customers being treated with far more respect. A well-dressed man was promptly served, while a woman in a headscarf was ignored. Ava felt a sinking feeling in her stomach. This wasn't right. It wasn't just the money. It was something deeper. "I've saved it up from various sources," Ava replied, her voice steady but firm. Janet's eyes narrowed as she inspected the bills with growing suspicion. "Are you sure it's all yours?" Janet asked, her tone harsh, as if she were questioning Ava's very right to the money. Ava's heart began to race. This was no longer just about a deposit. This felt personal. "Yes, it's mine," Ava said, standing tall, refusing to back down. Janet didn't respond immediately, but instead glanced nervously toward her colleagues. It was clear now. This wasn't a simple transaction. Before she could react further, a man walked over from a nearby office. He was tall and dressed in a sharp suit. He looked like he held authority. "Is there a problem here?" the man asked, his gaze focused on Ava, then shifting to Janet. "This young lady wants to deposit a large sum of money," Janet said slowly, her voice laced with doubt. Ava stood still, her gaze unwavering. She wasn't going to let them intimidate her. "You seem unsure if this money belongs to her," the man continued. "Maybe she's doing this for someone else." Ava's blood boiled. She could feel their doubts about her integrity, but she wasn't going to apologize for having money. Just as Ava was about to speak up again, the door to the back office swung open with a loud click, and a woman in a sharp blazer entered the room. The room seemed to quiet instantly as she walked in. She had an air of authority about her, and the way everyone stood straighter at her arrival told Ava that this was someone important. "What's the issue here?" she asked, her voice cool and confident as she scanned the scene. "This young lady is trying to deposit a large sum of cash, but we have some concerns about the legitimacy of the deposit," Janet replied, her tone still full of suspicion. The woman in the blazer narrowed her eyes as she turned to Ava. "And what's your name, young lady?" "Ava Jackson," she said firmly, refusing to let the situation intimidate her. "Jackson?" The woman's expression flickered for a moment, but she quickly masked it with a professional smile. "Let's see what we can do," the woman said. She turned to Janet and the man in the suit. "Get the footage from security now." The tension in the air was palpable. Ava could feel the weight of their stares on her, as if they were waiting for her to crack. "You don't need to do that," Ava said, trying to remain calm. "If you have any doubts, I can call someone who can confirm this is my money." The woman in the blazer raised an eyebrow. "And who might that be?" she asked, her voice tinged with sarcasm. Ava took a deep breath, reached into her pocket and dialed her father's number. "You'll find out soon enough," she said coolly. As she waited, the bank staff exchanged uneasy glances. Ava could see their anxiety building, and it made her feel strangely empowered. After a few moments, Ava's phone buzzed. "Hello, Dad," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "I need your help at Silvercrest Bank. They're questioning my deposit." Ava glanced at the staff, a small smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "My father is Dr. Samuel Jackson, the CEO of this bank. I'm sure that'll clear things up." The staff froze. The change in atmosphere was immediate. Janet's eyes widened, and the man in the suit looked like he had seen a ghost. "Dr. Jackson is your father?" Janet stammered, her voice cracking. Ava nodded, her expression calm, as she continued to stand tall, her earlier discomfort now replaced with a quiet confidence. The seconds seemed to drag on forever before the door swung open again. This time it wasn't another staff member. It was Dr. Samuel Jackson, towering and impeccably dressed, his presence dominating the entire room. The moment Dr. Jackson stepped into the bank, the tension in the room vanished. Everyone straightened up, and there was a palpable shift in the air. Dr. Jackson's eyes scanned the room. Without saying a word, he walked straight to Ava, his daughter, who stood at the counter. "What happened here, Ava?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying a tone of authority. Ava took a deep breath and looked at the bank staff. "They're questioning my deposit, Dad," she said, "and they've been treating me like a criminal because of my race." Dr. Jackson's expression darkened. He turned to Janet, then to the other staff members who were standing by, watching the scene unfold. "You assumed my daughter couldn't possibly have earned that money on her own?" he asked, his voice dripping with disdain. Janet opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked like she wanted to speak, but realized anything she said would only make the situation worse. Dr. Jackson stood still for a moment, letting the silence hang in the air before speaking again. "I reviewed the security footage," he said, his voice sharp. "I saw everything. I heard every word." The bank employees shifted uncomfortably, and Ava could see their faces turning pale. Dr. Jackson's next words were deliberate, each one cutting through the tension in the room. "I am Dr. Samuel Jackson, the CEO of this bank. You will treat every customer with the respect they deserve, or there will be consequences." He paused for a moment, his eyes fixed on Janet. "You're dismissed, Janet," he said with a finality that made the whole room fall silent. Janet's face turned ashen. She opened her mouth to protest, but no sound came out. She took a step back, completely defeated. "As for the rest of you," Dr. Jackson continued, his gaze sweeping across the remaining staff members, "I will be personally overseeing an audit of your actions today. I expect full accountability from each of you." The rest of the staff stood frozen, unable to speak or move. Ava could feel her heart pounding as she watched her father take control of the situation. After a long pause, Dr. Jackson turned to Ava. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly, his voice full of admiration. Ava smiled, a weight lifting off her shoulders. "Thanks, Dad, but this isn't just about me." Dr. Jackson nodded. "I know, but you've done something important today, something that will change how this bank, and hopefully others, treat people." The atmosphere in the room slowly shifted from tension to calm. With one simple act of standing up for herself, Ava had forced a change, not just for herself, but for everyone who would walk into the bank in the future. In the days that followed, the news of what happened at the Ridgeway branch spread like wildfire. Ava's story went viral, and social media platforms were flooded with support, outrage, and discussion. People from all over the world shared their own experiences of racial discrimination in banks and other institutions. The story became a rallying cry for many who had been marginalized or treated unfairly. As Ava watched the news unfold, she was overwhelmed by the response. She never imagined her actions would spark such a widespread conversation about race, privilege, and equality. But despite the attention and praise, she remained grounded. For Ava, this was never about fame or recognition. It was about making sure that no one would ever have to face the same treatment she did. "I'm just a kid," Ava said in one of her interviews. "I don't want to be famous. I just want to make sure something like this never happens again." Dr. Jackson's response to the public outcry was swift and decisive. He implemented new policies at the bank to ensure that discrimination would never happen again. Effective immediately, Dr. Jackson announced, all employees will undergo mandatory diversity and anti-discrimination training. We will also be monitoring all customer interactions closely, and we're setting up a confidential hotline for complaints. The changes came quickly. Ava noticed that the next time she entered the bank, things were different. No one gave her suspicious looks. No one treated her like an outsider. Even the woman who had been the most dismissive of Ava before, Janet, was no longer there. Ava could see the change in the staff's attitude. They were more courteous, more respectful, and more aware of the biases they had once unknowingly harbored. Ava felt a sense of peace wash over her. It wasn't just that the bank had changed, but that something bigger was shifting in the world. She had been a catalyst for that change, and she felt proud. Weeks later, Ava returned to the same branch. This time, there were no cameras or reporters, just her and the employees who now knew her as a regular customer. The employee at the counter greeted her with a friendly smile. "Good afternoon, Miss Ava. How can I assist you today?" Ava smiled back, feeling the weight of the past few weeks lifting off her shoulders. "I'd like to make a deposit," she said, just like any other customer. The process was smooth and efficient, with no condescending questions or side glances. Ava felt like she truly belonged there now. As she left the bank, Ava couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. It wasn't just about what happened to her, it was about what had changed for everyone who walked through those doors. She had stood up for herself, and in doing so, she had made a difference in the world. One person, one voice, could make a huge impact. Change doesn't happen overnight, Ava thought to herself, but it starts with one person making the decision to speak up.